I'd like to share two things from a safety perspective. This is not scripted, but it is personal. Number one, how many people have inflatable life vests on their boat? How many people have ever popped an inflatable life vest on their boat? Or otherwise. For those who have inflatable life vests and haven't done it, I highly suggest that when you go out, talk to your crew. You don't have to do it, but it is an experience. It's like airbags going off in your car. Most people don't know what that's like, thank God. But if it happens, it's a very sudden thing. And I personally witnessed a professional in a situation that went overboard. And this is a trained professional. When those things go off, most people will strap them on tightly, as you should, and all that. But when they go off, it poof in your face a lot of times. And this particular gentleman, it was 24 degrees, the water was really cold, it was blowing like hell, and he couldn't breathe. And he panicked. This was a strapping, professional, gentleman, Marine, trained and all that, but he absolutely panicked because he couldn't breathe. And there was a lady that he was rescuing, remembered her training from sitting in airplanes and saying, do the little thing, and she had to dive in and find a clip to let him out because he couldn't breathe. He had on other protective gear and stuff like that. There was, other circumstances. I'm just telling you, it's good to talk through it at least with your crew, that if you have inflatable life vests, which are, I love, I have them too, at least talk to the crew, when they go off, if you hit the water, it's going to be a little bit of a surprise. So that's something that's personal. But also, there's one other one. When I was a young, cavalier, energetic project engineer offshore in the late 80s, I was, out one night doing a research project on an installation vessel in the Gulf of Mexico. And being, the go-getter that I was out there by myself at night running with an air tugger. This is only a little 15-ton air tugger, no big deal, right? And one of the deck captains walked out to me and he said, "Hey, cuz, look, I appreciate what you're doing is cool and all that." He said, "But look, that air tugger doesn't really give a shit about you. And if something happens and you get wrapped up in that, there's not going to be anybody here to help. And I really don't want to fill out that report. So do me a favor. If you come out here, would you make sure that somebody's with you? Because I think it's going to be better for everybody." And it was interesting because I grew up in construction my whole life. And I never, look, I did a lot of dangerous stuff. But he had the way of not chewing my ass out about it, but making it personal, as you would do in an offshore situation, one coon ass to another. But he showed that he actually cared that I didn't get hurt. And he said it in a way that made me realize, it was a real danger. So there's one thing that Jay talked about, and it's when you have to send somebody forward and all that. The other thing I would remind everybody is, at night, never, never, never leave one person on deck. Everybody's tired. What Jay said is so, so true. Plan your schedule, plan shifts, do all that. Because never leave one person on board. Because in a minute, somebody can go overboard doing the simplest thing. And so make it personal. That makes everybody know, I want everybody to go home safely. And that's really what it's, that's really the key to safety. In all my experience working with, multinational cultures all over the world, somehow you have to make it personal. And whether you're crew or your captain, take a moment often, not just once, but often, to to make it personal, to remember that it's just a race. We're having a good time. But let's watch out for each other. You have to do that one thing, to make sure that everybody gets home safely. So that's all I'm going to say on that, and I hope everybody remembers, if nothing else, take care of your crew and each other. Our next speaker is Tom Collier. Tom has spent his whole life in Houston and has been boating for 60 years. So he must be at least 60 years old. He started sailing as a kid and his father began taking offshore to fish when Bridge Harbor opened in the early 60s. He got his first boat operator's license in 1966 and worked as a sport fishing charter, holding against him, captain during the summer at college. He did return to sailing after college when he was in a position to spend money on boats rather than make money on boats. He's been involved with Harvest Moon for about 20 years and chaired the race committee in 2008 and 2009. While he's been involved in Lake for many years, he's also past Commodore with the club. He showed his true priorities when, after his kids finished college. I love this story because he told us during Harvey, when his kids went to college and got married, he and his wife Sue sold the house and got on the boat and left. And then spent 3 years on their sailboat in the Eastern Caribbean, cruising the Bahamas to Venezuela. Tom, where's Tom? Oh.
Thank you. Listening to Jake talk, got 3 years in prison. They say you suppress bad memories, remember good stuff. Listen to him talk, some of the bad stuff came back in like flashbacks. That was good, good talk. I've really got 4 areas I want to talk about. The ship channels, operating offshore, places to abandon the race, and the trip home. This stuff is far from comprehensive. I'm kind of hitting on the high spots that are either concerns of the Coast Guard, concerns of the race organizers, some new information that just affects this year, and some of the things that seem to happen every year that are just, I want to refresh in people's minds. First thing I want to mention is the local notice to mariners. There's a lot of this information, stuff about the dredging, ATONs, all of that is very available. Most people don't look at that, but if you're going down the coast or you're going offshore, it's worthwhile to download it, just skim through it. There's the 2 things you're looking for is that it's District 8, the Gulf Coast area, and it'll show you the week. Also the number of pages. This one's 55 pages long, plus there's some addendums. That's it's listed in basically east to west. Again, this is not something you go through in detail, but it's not a bad thing to look at if you're going offshore or navigating down the coast. Easy to get. You go to the www.navgen.uscg.gov, and again, you're looking for local notice of mariners, and you're looking for the District 8 Gulf Coast. I'm not going to, whoops. Things a little, All right, well, listen. Commercial traffic. There's really 3 things that you really need to remember about dealing with commercial traffic. And this thing's kind of gone berserk, but the first one is it's in the call regs. It's the law. The second thing is the condition of the race, and the third thing is it's just flat common sense. In the call regs are very specific that a vessel of less than 20 meters or a sailing vessel, so keep out of the way of vessels that can only safely navigate in the channel or fairway. What that means is very simple. Those ships and barges out there in the channel have the right of way, and you're required by law to stay out of their way. Uh, the other thing is that the most misunderstood concept in sailing is that sailboats have the right of way. They do in some cases, but in the hierarchy, there are ways down the line. And you have to stay out of the way of ships limited in their ability to maneuver. You have to stay out of the way of vessels involved in fishing. That's those pesky damn shrimp boats. But unfortunately, those guys do have the right of way, and it's our obligation to stay out of their way. Second part of this is a condition of the race. The Coast Guard issues the permits for our races, and they have two big concerns. First is safety, the safety of everybody involved. The second, I don't know what's going on, but this is
Just use the arrows on the computer, put that.
okay, how about that?
Yeah.
All right, so as I was saying, it's a condition of the race. Coast Guard's concerned about safety. They're also concerned about us interfering with commercial traffic. Those are guys out there making money, and it just did it again.
We can swap to a different version of your, get you out of this one and into another one and see if
Just take the little dongle.
Just give me a second here and let me go to just your slideshow. No, it's here. Just got it. Come up.
It's probably just a dongle.
Probably what?
Just don't, yeah.
Okay, now just use the arrow and get to where you got to be watching this and not what's there.
All right, so it's the concern of the Coast Guard is safety in marine traffic, commercial traffic. And as our PRO David mentioned earlier, if you interfere with commercial traffic, they can verify it, you will be disqualified. It's that serious. The other thing is it's just common sense. The average sailboat weighs about 15 tons. The ships are as large as 150,000 tons. You're just not going to win that war. Some people call this the rule of gross tonnage. Some people call it the big boat rule. These guys you just need to stay away from. These guys are underway. You get in front of them. They can't stop and they can't slow down. They can't maneuver to go around it.
My battery's almost dead. That's why they are having trouble here. Pardon me a second. Let's swap mics and see if this will help. Try to speak.
All right.
Now.
So these guys can't slow down, they can't maneuver, they can't turn, and if you get up in front of them, they can't even see you from the wheelhouse. It's just not going to end well. The other thing I'd like to kind of mention, this came up in the bar the other night, but I think it's very valid. People get too close to these things too. You worry about prop wash and about waves, you can see those. One of the things you can't see is screw suction current. It has two components, the prop wash, which you do, but the other part is the suction component of it. What you really have is a low pressure area that along the sides of that's where the water's coming from that comes out the back of the boat. You have a big pressure wave in front of it. One of the things people don't understand is, I think everybody's heard of Texas chicken, the maneuver that the ships do in a ship channel to keep from hitting each other. The physics of screw current suction is part of the how and why that maneuver works. And if you get close to one of these things and you happen to get in that area, it'll slam you right into the side of the boat. There's not a damn thing you can do about it. There's no reason to get close to one of these ships. You just need to give them plenty of room. And the other thing that I'd like to mention is if you're heading towards one of these ships, you got one approaching you or coming up behind you, don't just scooch over. The law requires that you make a maneuver that's, you make a course change that's apparent to the other guy that he can tell what you're doing. If everybody would do that, there'd probably be a lot of pilots that had less gray hair, didn't have to carry Rolex, and they'd have a much higher opinion of a lot more respect for the boating community. So if you get to say, when you got a ship approaching you, make a course change that's obvious to them what your intentions are, that you see them and you're getting over to get out of the way. Barge lanes. You really don't need to be out in the deep water of the channel. The configuration looks something like this. You've got about 200 feet on both sides you can maneuver. If you're in that deep water, you just got farther to go when. It's not if, when that ship comes along. So stay over to the sides, and you can really, transition area, the barges stay pretty far over. You got a little area you can get around them. You've also, I've highlighted all these little circles, yellow circles here are circling depths that are actually outside the channel marks. If you get in a bind, there's absolutely no reason you can't pass on the wrong side of the mark to avoid the situation. I don't know of any place in the bay that's a problem.
Try to keep the mic right.
Okay,
Turn your head and
The other thing I want to mention is Project 11. The Coast Guard touched on it earlier, but you got two barges working down there. This one's just this hopper barge is just south of Redfish. The Dredge Carolina is down by the end of Texas City. There was when we moved the Battleship Texas down by the end of Texas City Dike. It's real easy to go on marine traffic and just, the AIS app and see where they are. And I would do that before the start of the race, just so you know where you're going to encounter them. The other thing I'd like to mention about this is that those yellow lines indicate the 3 30-inch dredge lines that are laid on the bottom. Theoretically, they're in 10 feet of water. There's spots out there that are probably not 7 feet deep. So if you're crossing over those things in a deep draft sailboat, happen to be out there, just be careful of those. The other thing is the Coast Guard talked about these ATOMs. Most of the channel markers, as he mentioned, are out where they're doing that work. You can go on AIS and pick on marine traffic and pick these up, and they should show up on your AIS. Also on the marine traffic app if you want to use that. I also want to mention West Pass. This is not my latest version, but Philip, here he is, sitting right here, gave us this handout. Oops, got a little ahead of myself. That covers the ATOMs and the dredging operation. Also mentioned West Pass. If you're on your way to a race and you have never done that before, you probably don't want to try it now, but boy, I'd encourage you to. Because I've never seen, even at very low tide, less than 7 feet in there. And it gives you a chance to get over there between the channel and Texas City Dike, and it's a pretty comfortable, relaxing way to go out and enjoy a boat ride to Galveston without having to deal with commercial traffic. You can go on his website, I think as they mentioned, and or on his Facebook page, and he's got 2 different publications about that make a pretty compelling case for using that route. Navigating safely offshore. And just a few things I want to cover here. One of them is the course itself. And most of the boats will be sailing in that. Inside this red line, in most cases, there's absolutely no reason to go in that safety fairway. You'll be inside of that. One of my pet peeves has always been the safety fairways. The commercial guys can tell you there's absolutely nothing safe about a safety fairway for a sailboat. Being in a sailboat in a safety fairway is about as safe as being on a bicycle freeway. If you're out inside that fairway and you got to worry about rigs, you got to, and you get inattentive and run into one of those unleaded roads, you're probably going to survive a collision with a rig at 7 knots. But it's only going to happen if you're not paying attention. You only got to worry about what's right in front of you. You got to run into it. You get in that fairway, you got to worry about a ship running up on you, doing 20 knots, and you're probably not going to survive. If you get inattentive and let them catch you, you're probably not going to survive that one. It's again, just the safety fairways out there. Rigs. We've talked repeatedly about rigs. Everybody knows about them. Everybody gets concerned about them. The truth is, I've never been out there that I haven't seen one that was unlit. And again, you only have to worry about the ones that are in front of you. They're not going to sneak up on you. Just keep a good lookout and be careful of them. Front boats. This is another thing. This comes from a deal. I always mention this because we had an experience when you're out there where about middle of the night we heard this call, shrimp boat. What are your intentions? It was coming from one of the racers, and he was all upset about the shrimp boat being in his way. You know, the truth is we're operating under the call rigs. And the call rigs say the sailing vessel must yield way to that shrimp boat. That shrimp boat has got the right of way. He doesn't have to do anything. And during the day, they're easy to spot. These guys work at night. They're anchored. It's easy to go around them. At night, they're a little bit more of a problem. They're so lit up on the back deck, on their work deck, that their running lights, their navigation lights are pretty obscured. Sometimes hard to tell which way they're going. They've got gear out behind them. And as the guy that was trying to get a hold of the shrimp boat a few years ago found out, they don't answer the radio, probably because there's nobody in the wheelhouse. You know, I've encountered a lot of these guys that the wheelhouse is empty. They're on autopilot, and that guy's on the back helping them to cull the cable. So be careful of these guys. Give them a wide berth. The other thing I want to mention is ships at night. It would be nice if this is what ships look like at night. They don't. Probably going to look more like this. The reality is, the law requires that their red-green lights be visible at 3 miles. The white lights actually 6. White lights don't really tell you much about where they're going. You see the range lights, you can kind of figure it out, but you got to be paying attention because 3 miles. These guys are traveling about a mile every 3 minutes, which means that from the time you can first really see them, they can be on you in less than 10 minutes. So pay attention. Fortunately, along our course, the place you really got to worry about them is going in and out of Freeport, going in and out of Matagorda, or going in and out of Port Aransas. Unless you get out there at safety. This is a picture you really don't want to see. So places to abandon a race. I want to kind of start with Galveston. You can always go back there. I also want to talk about this a little bit because we had a very experienced sailor that had never missed a harvest moon, ended up on the rocks here a few years ago. It's just real hard. Coming in here at night is real hard to it's real deceptive, let me say that. Problem is, people forget this jetty runs almost east and west, where the others are pretty much perpendicular. The other part of it is, if you're approaching it from down the coast, when you're off the pleasure pier, you're still 6 miles from the jetties. The illusion at night is that you're passing Galveston, and you really are. You're sailing by the lights of Galveston before you ever get to the channel. The other part of it that makes it dangerous is that as you pass Galveston, you start picking up the lights over on Bolivar, and they're farther away. So the tendency is to kind of cut the corner a little bit. Well, the problem is if you cut the corner, you end up in right on the rocks. And that's happened more than once. So just be careful. The rule of thumb, I'll tell you what, I mentioned I've been doing this for over 60 years. Well, that was before Loran and GPS. I had an old guy tell me one time that, the depth sounder is your best navigation aid. And if on the Texas coast, if you stay in 35 feet of water, you can't get in trouble. And if you look at this, 35 foot of water here is just inside the sea buoy. And I'll show you some other places that applies. In fact, it applies all along the coast. Places to abandon the race. From the start, it's 34 miles to Freeport. It's 96 miles to Matagorda, which puts that about 60 miles from Freeport. And it's 147 to the Port A jetties, which is 51 miles from Matagorda. So you're never more than about 30 miles from a place to get off, to get back inshore. These are well lighted and navigable at night. Remember the closest place may be behind you, but more important, sailing conditions may dictate the closest place to go. I was thinking as Jay was talking earlier, if you're pounding into big waves, you turn around, go run downwind, you're in a different ocean. And so a lot of times it may be a lot better just to turn around and go a longer distance back to where, a lot better for everybody, turn around and go a longer distance back to the place that was behind you. Or sometimes continue on to a longer distance in front of you just because the sailing conditions are better. And the other thing, and I mentioned this before, watch your depth. If you stay in 35 feet of water, you can't get in too much trouble on the Texas coast. So Freeport. A couple of things about Freeport. First of all, that's the sea buoy that I think is one of the marks in the race. 35 foot of water here is right there. You're outside the 4 marker, inside the sea buoy, but you're still in plenty of deep water and back away from the jetties. This is the aerial of Freeport. It's a pretty straight shot. It's a relatively short jetty. It's wide, and it's pretty easy to get into and out of. As I say, it's a pretty straight shot. The one thing about this is the range markers are pretty obscure. You've got this industrial area behind you with a lot of lights, and the back range marker is over here in this area. So with all the lights and stuff, it's pretty hard to pick up from the cockpit of a sailboat. But other than that, it is well marked, and it's pretty easy to get in and out of. Matagorda, again, 35 foot of water puts you inside their sea buoy, but well outside the jetties. There's the sea buoy. This one again is wide. It's a relatively straight shot here. The sea buoy, the range markers on this one are really easy to pick up. The thing I would caution you about here is this is a big bay, and if the tide's running out and it's running against the prevailing wind and the wind's blowing pretty good, the waves stack up in here. If you're not paying attention going in here, it's real easy. I've seen a boat broach in here, so big waves pick up the stern of your boat, and just be careful. It's really not a problem if you're on your toes. You just don't want to get caught by surprise. And the last place to get out is Port Aransas. Again, 35 foot of water is outside the sea mark. The 4 mark. We used to use the 6 around that when we were finishing jetties, so you got plenty of room. The jetties themselves, I used to think they were wide. With all the tanker traffic going in and out of there now, they've gotten pretty narrow. But it is a pretty good shot. The problem here is you do have a lot of lights behind you, the lights of Harbor Island. It's hard to pick up those range markers, but the channel is pretty well marked and pretty easy to get in and out of. Again, you can have a pretty good current running here. These next couple of slides actually came from one of Corpus Christi pilots when he came up here to do a presentation a while ago, just to make us aware of the things that they're worried about concerning small sailboats.
That's what I'm looking at.
One of them, he told, he was pretty specific that these wide-body tankers, and there's a lot of them now. I mean, since the shale oil production started, Corpus is a net exporter of oil, and they have twice as many pilots as they did 10 years ago. I mean, it's grown that much. So there's just a lot of traffic in there. What they're worried about is staying in the middle of the channel and position themselves for the big turn they got to make at the Harbor Island intersection and meeting any other traffic. As he pointed out, the flood depth tides there can run as strong as 3 knots, and they have to worry about the wind, the effect of the wind as well. The problem that complicates this that he didn't really mention is you got all the water coming out of Corpus Bay running out that ship channel, and you got all the water coming from Aransas Bay coming down Libya and channel, and all merges right there. So you need to be really careful in there and of that traffic, because they are really strapped there. That's the Harbor Island intersection, and this again from the pilots. They'll make a safety call. They monitor channel 12. They'll make a safety call at the 3 mark, which is about 20 minutes out. They'll make another one at the 7 and 8, which is about 15 minutes before the Harbor Island intersection. So you need to know those guys are coming. Also, when you get in there, the Harbor Island intersection is right outside the entrance to the marina. Don't stop in the middle of the channel to take your sails down. You can round up into this area and get out of the way, and there's plenty of room. But just, be considerate, because be ashamed to get that close, get 5 whistles, and get thrown out of the race. Docking in Port Aransas. They're going to ask that when you get about 100 yards from the entrance, call the harbor master on channel 3 for a dock assignment. If you call too early and there's several boats coming in, they get confused. It doesn't help anybody. I mean, it's hard to tell which boat is which in the middle of the night when there's a bunch of boats coming in there. So don't call too early. They also ask that you give the name of the boat, your link, and your draft so they can verify who you are and where they can put you. Docking assignments will be on a first-come, first-served basis. Boats should be prepared to raft. They may or may not have a slip for you depending on how soon you get there. And please have your fenders and your dock lines out. I can't tell you how many good racers come in there and good sailors, and they're ready to tie up, or ready to raft up, and then they got to go dig through their lockers and get lines. There'll be volunteers there to help you from the committee to help you tie up. Please follow the instructions. They're just trying to help you, and be patient with these guys. They're volunteers. The trip home. They asked me to talk about this a little bit, but the first thing I want to mention is Corpus Christi Bay. They asked us to show you this too. I think somebody mentioned, David mentioned there's some new dredging down here. What you have is a new spoil bank in this area, and you have another one down here. The one number 1 is not really a problem. It's on the north side of the ship channel, and it's just past the Ingleside cutoff. But the other one, and this is actually a reproduction of the latest, I just loaded this last week. Navionics chart, which will be your electronic chart. What it shows is the old spoil banks, and nobody pays any attention to those because there's about 8 feet of water over them. So they're on the chart, but nobody paid any attention to them. There's a Corpus, you can see how close they are to the Corpus Christi. What's changed is, and this came from the Notice of Mariners, this is the picture of the drawing from Great Lakes Dredge of the operation. These are those old spoil banks that are marked on the channel but non-existent. This is the new one. This new one, you can see how close it is to the Corpus Christi channel. Normal course people take, they probably have to go around this. The problem is the charts aren't accurate. The electronic charts aren't accurate. The police, the Port Police actually went out and surveyed it after they had a bunch of people running around. And turns out there's only about 2 feet over it right now. There's supposed to be, at the end of the project, a minimum of 6 feet. The local people are working with them trying to get it down to 8 feet. But right now, that's a dangerous deal, and if you happen to be going that way, you need to be very aware of it. So the trip home, there's the biggest problem with the trip home is places to stop, particularly on this leg. Some of the options we had before are gone. We used to stop, used to be a good stop at Sanctuary. Right before you got to Port O'Connor, they won't let transients in there now. I talked to them last week. The only thing they'll allow is a minimum 30-day rent, slip rent. So that option's off the table. There's not really any other good places in Port O'Connor anymore. Of course, the other part of the trip home that's a long one is if you go Matagorda Marina all the way to Seabrook, it's 95 miles, and that's an awful long ways for a sailboat motor in one day. One thing about that is I run it in a day in my trawler now, doing about 7.5 knots, but I finish it after dark. Of course, I don't mind being in Galveston Bay after dark because I run that all the time, but it's still a long haul, and if you're doing less than that in a sailboat, you need a place to stop. So let's go back to that 83 miles inside from from Freeport to Matagorda. There is one place you can stop there, and that's right after Port O'Connor. This is strictly a settled weather stop. You can pull in behind Matagorda Island and anchor. I've spent a lot of nights there, and in good weather it's great. You don't ever want to get caught there with the front approaching. In a west wind, and actually where that is there's Port O'Connor. You actually start into the channel and you turn out and anchor down in this area. It's great in prevailing winds, but you just do not want to get caught there in a west wind or a north wind. The north wind, the fetch across Matagorda Bay, that is a brutal place to be, and you're on a lee shore. You just don't want to be there. If you go from Matagorda to Freeport, you got 42 miles. That's from the Matagorda Marina. If you stop at, we used to call it the Gun Club, right there behind Matagorda, you can add about 10 miles to this. That makes it 52. That's a pretty reasonable day. There's several obstacles you got to deal with. The first is the Colorado locks. The Colorado locks, this is what they look like on the chart. This is a little better picture of them. This is more in perspective. And they are actual locks, but I can tell you, most of the time you go through, they're either wide open or they'll open one gate for you and then close it behind you. I can't remember the last time I actually had to lock through there. The only problem it's going to have to deal with is there's a lot of tow traffic through here. This is a little better picture of what the locks themselves look like. Again, they're far enough. If you're in there by yourself, they'll close, even if they have to close, if they're lock-in, but there's no elevation change, which again, you probably don't want to cross the Colorado River if there's a good, if there's a big elevation change, if you actually have to lock, because the currents in there would be pretty bad. But most of the time, I mean, like I say, I can't remember the last time you had to actually tie up or anything. You just slow down, they'll open, in worst cases, they'll open one gate, let you in, and you just run slow or dead slow, and they'll have it closed behind you, the other one open by the time you get there. Incidentally, those locks are on channel 13. They'll answer the Colorado River, or they'll also answer to 412. You'll hear the towboats talking to 412. That's what they're talking to the Colorado locks. This is the Matagorda Marina. That's kind of a must stop for us on the way down there. According to Donnie Mitchell, they got great chicken legs. No, frog legs. Tastes like chicken. Didn't get that right, did I, Donnie? Anyway, that's always been a stop for us. You can't, there's a great little restaurant right there on the property. They are not open on Tuesday or Wednesday, so you have to kind of plan that accordingly. But they're very accommodating. You can call that marine on the phone and make reservations. The Brazos River, which you have here, is not locked, but a floodgate. This is the aerial of what they look like. You can call them on the phone, but better, you want to call them on the radio. Again, channel 13, they answer the 411 or the Brazos River floodgates. And again, because of the traffic, they may ask you to hold up in the river. Don't go far down river. Stay right in the vicinity there, because there's a lot of shoals and sandbars and stuff in there, depending on the time of the year. This again is what those look like. I mean, when they open them up, you just go on through. Sometimes there's a little current in all of this. Any of this, so just be prepared for that. I just look out for duck traffic. Freeport. There's two places you can stop in Freeport. One on the Surfside, the other one's Bridge Harbor. It's kind of a personal preference thing. I think Surfside is again under new ownership. Bridge Harbor is again under new ownership. And the last person that I talked to that was down there said it was pretty good again. But you can never tell about that place. So, but either one of those are good places to stop. And the last thing I want to mention is if you're going to run into intercoastal, you've got to learn to talk tugboat. The first thing, and people seem to get this confused. I don't know why. It shouldn't be that difficult, but they're going to tell you to come by me on the one whistle or the two whistle. One whistle means I'm going to leave you on my port. So if you're meeting them, it's port to port. If you're overtaking them and they tell you to take me on the one, it's going to be your port to their starboard. Same thing the other way. Two whistles is starboard to starboard meeting. It's always, I'm going to leave you. That would always be, I'm leaving you on my starboard. Another thing you might hear them say is, and the main thing to do with these towboats is talk to them. If you communicate with them, they'll make your life and their life a whole lot better. And most of them, if you'll do that, they'll help you. Some of them in a sailboat, doing sailboat displacement speeds, if they're running hard, some of these boats are just a job to get around them. But a lot of them will slow down. They'll tell you, another towboat term, they'll cool them off. That means they're pulling the throttles back and they're going to slow down for you. But a lot of times they'll do that, particularly if they see you're having a hard time getting up on them. Again, watch the prop wash of these guys, and and you again have the screw current section, you get it too close to the side of it. So with that, any questions? Yes.
So if you need to pull off in Freeport or Matagorda, are those the marinas that you suggest going to, or is there another anchorage? I don't think you can anchor.
No, there's not any really good anchors.
Yeah, I don't think there is, but so.
That's the whole problem with that trip back. We've kind of run out of good
I'm
spots.
talking even on the trip there.
During the race,
So during the race,
you duck out in the Matagorda.
So if you're heavy weather, it's middle of the night, where do you go in Freeport, where do you go in Matagorda?
I would, if I had a choice, I'd go into Freeport because you got two marinas you can go to.
Oh, okay.
If you go into Matagorda at night, you're gonna get out of the ocean. Matagorda Bay's kind of rough. You gotta go into Port Connor. And there's limited places you can go in Port Connor. If you really got in a bind, there's 2 fuel docks there. And in the middle of the night, you could probably tie up there and get a little rest. But there's no good place to stay.
Yeah, just to tie up, just if you're
Yeah, I
in
mean,
trouble, yeah.
you know, I can tell you if it was me, and I was coming in the middle of the night and had a big problem, had problems on the boat, I'd tie up one of those fuel docks and argue with them in the morning.
Yeah. Cool.
All right. Nothing else? Thank you.
Thank you.